radically alter our current state? No, we're starting from you. Sarah has spoken a lot. But also, this is a lot of jargon, Christabel. But we understand. We understand. Okay. Okay. Okay, but also like in simpler language. Like if you break that down, like what does it mean?
Policy and legislations that encompass all aspects of can I say intersectionality or okay, marginalization, gender, youth, LGBTQ, yeah, all those aspects.
Do you think ethnicity remains important?
Sorry?
Ethnicity? Do you want to
Yes. Religion, race,
okay,
yeah,
great.
all those aspects. Nationalities.
Okay, let's move to Zetihun.
What it should be, or how is it? Yeah, it should be. This inclusive word is very important. All women with disabilities, without disabilities, whatever, with different religion or ethnic groups, should have a place, safe space first, where they interact. So the opportunity should be given to all, is the idea I have. It should be, yeah.
Okay, besides representation of all groups, issues being like I may not be, for example, a person might not be a person with disability, but could represent everything. Like people might not be there in person, but those who are in the space represent everybody. They are able to raise issues. Yeah.
Okay, I wish inclusivity as it is, but I should to see a peaceful world and all citizens respected equally by its humanity, not by its ethnicity, religion, or disability, or whatever gender, but because of us human beings, or it's treated equally and having the same country or world using the resources as it is.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I believe there should be accessible information and resources. So when there is accessible information and resources, there should be equal participation in terms of it can be education or in different kind of trainings. Thank you.
Now, away from inclusivity, my radical thinking is here. You know, women are known to dominate the lower level positions, whereas men dominate the middle and senior level positions. So for me, what I want to see, I want to come to the decision-making tables and ensure that women dominate those senior level positions where they have a say in decisions. Whereas here we are saying that, for example, in Ethiopia, our neighbor or our friend, they have 7 women leading ministries. But let me tell you one thing. It's one thing to be a minister, but there is a very important person in the ministry, the permanent secretary in the ministry is the budget holder. You know, they're the technical people. You can be a minister here, but you're just, you don't make decisions. Can we have women in these higher decision-making spaces or positions, permanent secretaries of ministries?
So just a disclaimer that you are all experts in all of your countries, and I am not, and I do think that politics need to be grounded in the realities of each country, and it need to be like context-led. So from my experience, from what I see, I would like to see politics that are not sensationalist, and the issues on the agenda are not led by populism and polarization of society or what is on TV, just kind of like focusing on the issues without the sensationalization. Oh my God, that's such a hard word. Without sensationalizing the issues that community has.
Okay, just I wa. So I want to see there are a lot of problems. These patriarchal systems are removed, and also I want to see where maybe this political position and any other things are offered, not based on this gender system, but on their capability to do that. And also I want to see there are a lot of problems with women. That's why previously we have said 100 or 70 years and the like. So equal pay, where there is equal pay and women have equal access to resources. So I want to see all this.
For me, I envision a world where everyone works in synergy, like our synergies connect both for the women with disabilities, and even the men, such that we will not have to fight, like be out there fighting so much and sweating as women to show that we have something to bring on the table, that it will be a place where people's minds are transformed, and even when a woman stands to speak or ask for votes, or a woman with disability is standing to address people, we will not first look at the hips of that woman and judge her from that, or see the disability first, but give that woman an opportunity, or look at her from the point of the issues that she wants to address. Yes.
I'm looking forward to a political space that is anti-corrupt and transparent.
Okay, I expect to see a fair and just world where we no more talk about inclusiveness or inclusive and quota system. If we have a just world, a fair world, we don't talk about this anymore.
All right. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning. Yes. You see, in Kenya, if you don't greet us, we'll keep saying hi. What I would love to see is women occupying the dominant spaces. And the fact that I would like to see all that come to an end, the fact that when a woman takes up the dominant spaces, they don't stay there for long. Yes. And also creating a safe space for them.
Well, what I'd like to see is a less stratified society. You find that society has so many layers of discrimination that you know, you're always being like singled out consciously or unconsciously and being boxed. Somebody, and most of it is unconscious, somebody sees you and they want to just imagine, like, in which box do I fit you? How do I, just even before I start relating with you, I just see you and I want to fit you into a particular box. You know, for women, it's funny. Sometimes you're too loud, you're too quiet, you're too thin, you're too big, you are know-it-all. You know, it's very interesting how society has reinforced some of these things such that you find it's like continuously we are in a society that is highly stratified. Yeah? Ni kama uko kwa staircase. At each and every level, somebody wants to fit you into some staircase or some drawer somewhere. So I'd really like to see those layers as we continue doing this work come down a little bit.
Last year I attended a course on feminism, and we are asked what is the opposite of feminist or feminism, and we gave all sort of answers, but all the answers are right, but the one seemed to be more right that was the oppression, that the opposite of feminism is oppression. So I would like to see a situation where we address all form of oppression in all levels, and where we address diversity and we address barriers that really hinders everybody or every woman, regardless where they come from or where they are. There are no barriers that really hinders their participation.
So I'd want to see equal distribution of power at all levels, equal treatment, a sense of belonging and value to women and girls with disabilities, achievement of women's full potential, and then a more representation of women and girls with disability in the political space.
For me, it's, my apologies. For me, it is the issue of inclusivity and more of mentorship. I look forward to seeing a political situation where women and the men, the he for she, hold the young ladies, especially the youth and persons with disability, so that we can be able to achieve a just political society. Thank you.
Thank you all. So from all your contributions, we see that we all want a world that is free of oppression, that is representative of people from every spectrum, and women in all their varieties. So rich, poor, disabled, abled, queer, non-queer, or straight, religious, not religious. So all people are appreciated regardless of their background, regardless of, and everybody gets to have a voice at the table, and especially at all levels of the table. People have access to equal resources, and the institutions of the state work for everybody. And they're all guided by transparency, equity, anti-corruption, justice, and that the people themselves, so the people that the Kenya Constitution talks about, can transform the political system in a way that can benefit everyone, especially the less privileged. So we don't want to hear about privilege. We want everybody to have like the same level of privilege in a feminist society. where's Georgia? I'm like, where's Georgia? I'm looking for her to contribute, but she's not here, but it's okay. I think she's probably has care duties. So feminism can contribute to participation and transformation, feminism in our context of participation and transformation can contribute in different ways in the political arena. So one is through a feminist analysis. And I just want to know, like, how many organizations are interested in using a feminist analysis when they're looking at sort of political discourse? Do any of our partners use sort of a feminist lens, a feminist analysis? Is this something that partners are interested in so that we can find ways to resource it? So I think it's a way, like when we look at things through a feminist lens, we're looking at different patriarchal structures and how we can change those patriarchal structures both in the short term and in the long term. The struggle to increase women's participation and occupation of decision-making positions, not just numerically. Like numerically is great because we're 50% of the population, but we also want to transform the nature, the ecosystem of political participation, because we've seen the numbers have been added. They're high numbers, but for some reason we're not getting that policy transformation that affects the lives of women at all levels, and then the different types of women that exist. Women's political participation and radical awareness can hold politics accountable. So feminism is all about accountability. There's actually a term called feminist accountability, and it talks about calling out wrongs that you see in society, calling them out. Is it patriarchy? Is it colonialism? Is it racism? I think feminist politics allows us to call out systems that are broken because of patriarchy and when we see them happening. And also, feminism doesn't actually call for political correctness. So all the people who are requiring women to be political correct, this is not like for women to have to package themselves in a certain way to get things, no. So feminism can help us kind of create that consciousness. And feminism also is about dismantling bureaucracies, especially bureaucracies that further patriarchal systems and that encourage violence for people who are non-compliant. And then a feminist lens for reviewing public policies. So a feminist analysis can allow us to see the injustice of the current economic system. So finance plays, first of all, when I'm talking about finance, I'm just getting traumatic vibes. I watched the news this morning. And Kenya's stock exchange was declared the worst in the world. So, so as we talk about economic systems, this current economic system is a neoliberal system. It is also a patriarchal system. It was designed by the powers that be, the World Banks, the IMF, and mostly the global north countries. And as a result, they're very oppressive, especially to global south countries. And Africa and Kenya specifically, I don't know about Uganda and I don't know about Ethiopia, are currently directly experiencing sort of economic oppression. So feminist analysis allows us to look at the current economic situation and find out what are more feminist, more equitable, and what are more feminist, more equitable systems, and advocate for them. And we advocate for policies that invest in women, that recognize women's work, which GDP does not, because women contribute massively to countries' well-being through women are primary health caregivers, women are basically produce workers. So women literally contribute a lot that is not recognized, non-monetary contribution that is not recognized. So policies must invest in women, their access to land, their opportunities, and their freedom. Feminist ideas can improve the quality of life and of living together, improve the situation of inequality that we have now, because feminism is about freedom to live a life with dignity and economic self-determination. And then feminism is a lens for reviewing social norms. So in the social arena, feminism, the main purpose of feminism is to deconstruct gender roles, to raise awareness of women's rights and women's interests. Feminism also helps overcome the public image of women. And African women, we know it has been said all through the workshop about like, there's so many things that are placed on us, but also apart from the so many things that we carry, we're also seen as powerless and victims and on the receiving end. So we're not acculturated to see our inherent power. And yeah, so I think it's important that we use a feminist lens to deconstruct, but also to reclaim our power. There are women in traditional communities and people who have convening power. So it's not just NGOs who have convening power. There are also other women who have convening power, who positively influence communities. And these are stories that need to be told because they're powerful opinion leaders and they may not be holding positions, but they can change a lot of things. And these are allies that we need to make as we campaign for women's participation in politics. Okay, feminism is also a way in which we can negotiate and redefine the political space, because while we're working for the feminist ideal, we do have to also work with what we have. So the conceptual notion of space and how space is gendered and highly politicized, and also everything is politicized, everything is political, the personal is political. So we need to redefine the political space. For a long time, and culturally, religiously, politically, spaces are marked as either male or female. So can somebody tell me a space that is traditionally male?
Traditionally, the army has been male-dominated. That is beginning to change, though slightly. Yes. Other spaces that are defined, and you can also give me spaces that are defined as women. Vikite. I was like, this is a space for women.
Yeah. Community leadership.
Yes, community leadership is defined as a male space.
And that community leadership includes Council of Elders.
Council of Elders is also male, and they make a lot of political decisions. Okay, so specific spaces, yeah, I already said that. So the spaces for women are usually linked to their breeding and feeding functions, like women cook and women take care of children and therefore should not be seen, and other spaces that are public are referred to as male. And for a long time, men have excluded women from public spaces and where critical decisions are made based on either their attachment to a male or their breeding and feeding function. These are the things that the patriarchal society have used to exclude women as being qualified for positions of leadership. So feminism can be used to challenge the patriarchal structures because in feminism, the personal is political, so therefore everything, every single thing is political. And it recognizes that all spaces need to be occupied by women who are pushing for an agenda of gender justice and transformative change. So in the context of feminism, public spaces that reach both people in their homes, so women should be allowed to make decisions starting from the home, but also in public spaces. So this divide between public and private spaces actually doesn't exist because men are determining them all the time and women are living in them. But through feminism, women can take up those spaces. And I think as African people, we also have to recognize the colonial legacy that we have, because that impacts how we govern and how we rule. And we have to think about how we divest from these institutions, mainly because there's a lot of control through money in our engagement with those systems. So whether you're engaging at a governmental level or whether you're engaging at an NGO level, you're always kind of battling the coloniality of our past and our present. Yeah. and it also keeps you in a state of hypervigilance. Am I doing the right thing? Yes, Galalcha, please go ahead.
Since we are talking about the feminism and also about the equality, and you've asked the domination, the representation, male and female. So in the most developed countries, female bear the name of the husband as a family name. How do we see the independence of women when we have this culture in the most developed and the per se democratic countries in Europe, in America, maybe some parts of Africa also. I don't know. I'm not sure. So how do we describe? Because we are just acknowledging the male dominance when we give the family name for a married woman or the husband's line. That should it be included in the struggle where women should have a safe space also to be named by their own family name?
That's a good question, and you are currently in your question dismantling the patriarchy. So women actually have a choice about whether to take their partner's last name. And in the European countries, maybe Iria can tell us, but my perception, and from the time I lived there, it's happening increasingly, especially in professional spaces where women make their own money. And also, and also in Europe, it's easier for women to have access to their children if their names, even when their names are different. So in Africa, women, and I will tell you, in Africa, the reason why women take their partners' names is because should you try and cross a border with a child with a different name, you actually have to produce a consent letter. Even you can have the birth certificate, but you have to produce a consent letter from your spouse or from the father of the child, which greatly, so for many women, it's kind of a choice between this serious level of oppression or just taking the name. And many women choose to take the name. So for me, I am married, and I have not taken my husband's name. But because I knew the law, my children, their last name is Majiwa Nan. Because we live in Kenya, nobody ever says Nan. Everybody's like Majiwa. So immediately they associate the child with me. But I have been asked when I went to get passports, now Majiwa is your name, and Majiwa is your child's name. Bwana uko wapi? I said, but I'm the one who gave birth to the child. So you see, it's just reclaiming your power. Like reclaiming your power. And also, like on your question, as before I go into political participation, I just want to give a short history lesson on how women came to take up men's names. Before, women didn't used to take up men's names. Women would have children, they would enter different types of relationships with men. But when it came to sort of ownership of material goods, and this is particularly with land and land enclosures, men then wanted to know their lineage. They wanted to make sure they were not passing on their land and their money to other men's progeny. So to ensure that, they created the institution of marriage, which they were helped with the church. And then the state came in to then reinforce their land rights. And then to pass, men couldn't pass land to women. That's very recent. Women couldn't own land apart from their husband or their father. So you see, again, women are constrained to take the name of a man. So that's a patriarchal system, and we're trying to break it. So before, so men wanted to know, okay, my child is any last name, Kamau, my wife is Kamau, and my child is Kamau. And that's a very tenuous link. I don't want to give the secret away, but that's a very tenuous link. But for men, it's very comforting. And that's why till now, women are still taking up men's names. But they have a choice, but it's going to be difficult should you choose to keep your own name. And you have to wonder, is that a battle worth fighting at every ID office, at every passport office, or asking you why you're married, are you married, are you not, why are you not married?
So I thoughts are running in my mind, Maureen, in connection to what you're saying, and I would like to hear the views or the thoughts of different people here, especially from our country context. And it's on the issue of religion, now connecting all this, getting our space, the issues of patriarchy, and how do you draw the line? Because I'm sure even here, we have maybe some people who are religious, they read their Bibles. So where do you draw the line when it comes to the issues of religion and the place of a woman? How do you get through all this when it comes to patriarchy? You go to church or you go to the mosque and your Quran says this or the Bible says this, and then you're here, you're going to these forums, then you hear different. How do you now draw the line?
Okay, should we hear from Ethiopia context first? So religion and women's space, because religion is one of the issues that have been mentioned with regards to women's participation in public spaces. Can we hear from the Ethiopia delegation on this table?
Religion depends on the person, the individual. You know, there are some people who follow strictly what Bible says, that husband is the head of, you know, a woman, a wife, should obey to her husband. So some women accept that because of the religion. But in some place, these days particularly, the young generation do not accept this. They try to escape it and try to show their equality, and they struggle for the equality. So it depends from one person to another.
Okay, there are some issues that, for example, that I respect from my religion, which gives priority for men. But I personally believe that's religion, and I can't use my gender lens or anything in my religion spaces. I just close that because it's called religion, and I just close that. But in my personal spaces, I don't have rooms for those principles. Like I believe I have the same right with my husband, and in Ethiopian context, we don't take the name of our husband. There's no such a thing. Yeah. So, okay. In Ethiopian context, we don't take the name of our husbands, and it depends on, as Zertun said, it depends on the relationship between the two to have power in their spaces.
Once you gave me the chance, you know, I'm from the rural area, and where I come from, in the rural area, women called by the name of their husbands. They are known through the husband. It's not legally there, but the person, the man, is more popular and famous. No one knows that woman unless they call the husband's name. So they give his name. Then that is common at some places, not in the entire country.
Uganda, can you tell us about the confluence of religion and women's participation in politics? Georgia is here, so you have a break, Sarah, and then I'll come back to you.
Sorry, gender roles keep interrupting. So religion is a big thing in Uganda. And actually one of it's like personal conflicts is so someone keeps wondering, I'm Christian, but I'm also feminist. And I do not, some of my Christianity values are against feminism. And some of my feminist values are against Christianity. But now in Uganda, we have a crop of Christian feminists who actually also look at the Bible with a feminist lens. So it is hard because for me, and I'm sorry to the Christians, for me, I feel like it is one of the most patriarchal books ever written, because it was also written by men, put together by men. And yes, I'm Catholic actually. So there's that. You understand. So because the other day I saw, I don't know if it's correct news, the Pope was saying in some instances they are going to be able to recognize same-sex marriages, and yet this is a church that still says they do not have the authority to ordain women priests. So I'm like, we can't have gender equality in piecemeals. Yeah, sorry, I digress. So it plays a very big role, and that is why the story I was sharing yesterday about the lady whose husband did not support her, he felt he was going to be, you know, I'm the head of this family, and you want to be the district governor, the district chairperson. That means you are my boss. How is that going to play out? So it still plays a very, very big role. And, you know, don't come into this space even beyond political leadership. There are positions in churches, in organizations that women cannot hold because religion says, no, you cannot be in this space. Yeah.
Georgia, could you also tell us Uganda's position on last names or taking the name of your partner?
So in Uganda, it's not a must, but as my sister from Ethiopia was sharing, it is the same, it's the exact truth. I was just looking at my mom. Mommy has made her name, but not with her name. Like she's made her name, but based on my father. And she doesn't even realize it. She finds that she has, because my dad is really, really popular in the district where we're from. So sometimes everyone refers to her as, in Uganda they say, Muchala so-and-so, like the wife of so-and-so. Without saying that, it's like, who are you? Who are you? So for her, she dropped her name completely, and it's not a must, because then you have to go to court, you have to do all these legalities. So legally, it's actually not done because people can't afford the court fees to be able to change their names to their husband's names. But socially and culturally, they are going to keep saying that is Jackie the wife of so-and-so. That is how they know you. That is your identity. You completely lose who you were before. Yeah. So it's the same as Ethiopia.
And you can imagine what that does for women's political participation, especially for women who are divorced or not partnered. Yeah. So if you're divorced, you can neither vie where you're from, you cannot vie where your husband is from. You're like a lost woman. So this taking the last name thing is definitely also a patriarchal tool, which we at Galalcha, we have now started to dismantle, and we'll continue. And this is going on. So where from here? Where from here? So I think it's key that we develop like really good documentation, really good analysis. And I think we've seen examples of that in this room. So we saw FIDA's, please remind me what it was, the SGBV monitor, which is a tool that can be used for advocacy. We saw the publication from FOWODE on election violence, which I'm sure they use for advocacy, and I'm sure our Ethiopian partners also have several publications that they also use for advocacy. So really good documentation, feminist documentation is key. Having a good feminist analysis when you're analyzing situations, because you don't only want to analyze them for what they are, but what they could be through a feminist lens, because we always want to be putting forward feminist solutions. And then it's really crucial that there's a joint struggle for safe spaces. There are lots of spaces that are not safe for women, particularly women who want to participate in politics, and more so for women with disabilities who want to participate in politics, considering they face discrimination from the wider society, but also from the women's movement. So it's important we build safe spaces that are also inclusive. We need to rebuild and build connections between feminist spaces and political parties, especially where women can connect and collectively construct common interest agendas. Because, and this is a hard one, but women do have to make that joining between feminist spaces and political parties, because as long as male politicians continue to dominate those political spaces, the design will never change. They will never be designed for women unless women are there and speaking their feminist structures and the way those institutions could be non-violent, not corrupt, transparent, and it's not based on sort of neoliberal economics, which leaves out women and really favors men who have access to resources. So women should also women taking a feminist stance when negotiating with patriarchal institutions. I think there is no room for equivocation. Almost give no space to sort of patriarchal arguments, because they really hold women back and continue to, and they lead to political marginalization, and they also create further divisions through groups. As Elizabeth said, in her ideal world, there'd be no stratification, but capitalist patriarchy specifically is built on stratification. Stratification around class, stratification around economics, stratification around ability, and why it's built around ability is because they think the patriarchy is you can only be a productive person if you can work for money. But there are a lot of ways that you are a productive person either way. So it's important that that is done. And then, so how do we do this? How do we do the what next? So we build interest communities, which is already happening, and feminist struggles just need to be rooted in feminism. We need to be more experimental. And I know that's really hard in the funding structures that exist, but do we ever experiment with feminist schools? I think FIDA's Leadership Academy was a brilliant idea, which hopefully other partners will take up, because I hasten to say it was quite successful. A lot of women who went through the academy got through. Of course, not all of them, but some went through, and it increased the numbers. Yeah, and 340 women were there, women with disabilities as well. Yeah, so it was an inclusive space, different ethnicities, different classes, from MCN all the way up. So that's I think a good place. It's was a good experiment, because you'd never done it before, but you'd listened to women politicians and crafted a space that they'd asked for, and a space that was safe. So remember, safe spaces equal truth-telling, because people feel that they can say. So building pressure for occupying spaces. So to transform patriarchal in the neocolonial state, women have to be aware of them. We have to be aware of what we're fighting. And this goes back to what Elizabeth said. You can't fight something that you don't know. So if you've been socialized in a certain way, you actually need to be desocialized. You need to be deprogrammed, so that you can see the injustices that are happening to you. And this stems, all the partners are already doing this. So this stems from community awareness, emotional bonding, because we're emotional beings. So let's also have bonds that are not just transactional, but are also emotional, but also that cater for both sides. And then just to remember that it's very hard to beat a group of people, and in this case I'm talking about women, I'm talking about feminists. It's really hard to beat a group of people that is connected in solidarity for a common cause. And if our common cause is women's representation, I think that it's something that we can't beat. So when the political system is not consulting people on their interests and ideas, organizing meetings for public goods where people can oppose or talk about state structures and how to engage effectively. So for example, if I'm not going to talk about the finance bill, but that was a time when a lot of space was created, but we need women's organizations to also create spaces like that to discuss like what women want, but also to break it down in a feminist way. Yeah, so I've spoken about this solidarity and feminist organizing. We can't do it alone. We need to do it in partnership. If you're alone, one, you'll be very tired. You'll be an easy target. So we had the joint experience of FIDA-Kenya and FIDA-Uganda. While they're not alone, while they're susceptible, so it's important that other women in the feminist space, other women in the women's rights space also act in solidarity with them and come to their defense. Because the only way we can move forward political agendas is by mass. That's the only way we can do it. Intersectional activism was mentioned before, so our activism needs to be intersectional. It needs to, in order for representation to be fully representative, it has to have people from all structures and all strata of society, and especially marginalized groups. We have to think about feminist economic alternatives. The reason why is that, unfortunately, financial capture has happened. I'm inventing a new term, like state capture, financial capture has happened. A lot of the money in politics and in leadership actually already belongs to men. So finding feminist economic alternatives will help with that. And then this is my last radical one for the present, commonly joining a party. So I think, like, even though parties are toxic and harmful spaces, it is important that we create ecosystems of feminist consciousness within parties. And one woman can't do that alone. It has to be several women. So if you don't want to join one of the male-dominated one, because we know what goes on there, in Kenya, we have a female-led party. We can ask later, how do we join? And what do we do if we join? We don't necessarily have to run, but women's parties also need a groundswell of support. They also need money. There are other ways you can contribute outside of running. Yeah, and I don't have an example of I think Hungary is the only example where they have like a kind of feminist party that has been able to make like really big strides. I think there's a case study on it. I don't have it, but I will Google it and send it to the group. And with that, I come to the end of my presentation. It's 11, so it's time for tea, and then when